There are less homes on the market now than there were a year ago, even with these high interest rates. Supply remains the big issue in America. Mortgage rates finally fell back below 7% at the end of last week, but just barely, which makes this the 10th consecutive week around a 7% interest rate. How are these high rates impacting buyers? Will prices ever come down, and what does all of this mean for the Dallas real estate market? My name is Michael. I'm a real estate agent here in the Dallas area, and every Monday I give you a market update covering all of Dallas and Collin counties. We're looking at trends, which cities and zip codes are the hottest if you may be looking to sell and get top dollar, as well as which cities and zip codes are the coolest if you may be a buyer looking for a deal. We're also tracking mortgage rates as well as mortgage purchase applications, as that's our best leading indicator to what demand is going to look like the next 30 to 90 days from now. We're looking at things like median list price, days on market, how many homes are having price decreases, inventory, and if you stick around until the end, it's my favorite part. It's the top 10 ranked list of the hottest cities and zip codes in both Dallas and Collin counties. If this sounds like something you're into, make sure to subscribe. And if you're looking to make a move in the Dallas area, whether it's next week or next year, I'd love to connect. I've helped every one of these yellow dots find their little piece of Texas, and I'd love to help you too. Just call, text, or shoot me an email. All that info is in the description below. Okay, today is July 17th. Let's see what the data is telling us. And if this is an old video, you can click the playlist here and it will take you to this week's market update. Okay, first up is market news. I wanted to share this article from the Dallas Business Journal. Dallas-Fort Worth builders closed a record number of home sales in the second quarter. So they closed a record number of home sales in the second quarter and are on pace for an all-time high. Construction was initiated on 14,795 housing units by DFW home builders, surpassing the quarterly pace in each of the previous 3 quarters, which averaged below 10,000 starts. So builders closed a record 14,397 homes in Q2, up 4.7% from the 13,753 closings a year ago. The annual pace of closings stands at an all-time high of 52,720 units. North Texas builders continue to offer discounts, incentives, and rate buydowns, and they're offering some pretty huge ones, which I'll talk about here in a minute. So what this means is, with rates this high, people are looking to builders because they're able to offer extremely low rates. And I'll be making a video on this actually later in the week, just about new construction homes, what kind of incentives they're offering, and if it may be a good option for you. But the long story short is they're offering amazing incentives. But the trade-off is you've got to be willing to live about 30 minutes outside the city. For example, one builder has a sale going on right now where they'll give you a 4.99% interest rate on an FHA loan. They'll pay all your closing costs. They'll give you a fridge, a washer, a dryer, and blinds for the entire house. So you can literally get into this house with a 4.99 rate, and all you have to do is bring your 3.5% to close. So if you're willing to live 30 minutes outside of the city, this is a great deal, because otherwise your option is to buy at top dollar in the city with a 7% interest rate, which is several $100s difference on your monthly payment. So a lot of people are exercising that option. And if you think you might be interested in looking at new construction for these incentives, give me a call and be on the lookout for the next video later this week. Okay, moving on, let's look at interest rates. Okay, we started the week at a 7.14, and thankfully we dropped from there all the way down to a 6.89. So we're now only 1.12% above where rates were last year, where you can see down here we were 1.41% just a week ago. So much smaller gap, good news. Very quickly, I wanted to show this graphic covering inventory. This black line is 2023, the green line is 2022. So you can see in the same time period, we went from way down here to way up here, a huge increase in this time period. In the same time period this year, we have barely moved up at all, which just tells us even with these high rates, there is still too much demand for too little supply. Now, regarding mortgage purchase applications, we actually saw a 2% increase this week, even though we only spent 2 days last week below a 7% interest rate. So it'll be interesting to see if we can stay below 7% all week this week, how much of an increase we'll see. And remember, we see an increase in people applying for mortgages as an increase in demand in the near future. And as a reminder, looking back on the previous 2 weeks when applications started to decline, we saw a total decline of 9%. So the 2% increase this week puts us back to a net negative 7% decline in demand over the last 3 weeks. All that this data is telling you is that there's no reason to believe it's going to get any easier or cheaper just based on supply and demand. If you can buy a home now, buy a home now. Please don't wait. Please don't try to time the market. And if you think homes are overpriced here, I made a video covering that last week. You can watch it here. Okay, moving on to the housing data. We're starting with Dallas County. If you've ever seen my videos, you know what we use here is the market action index. It just takes all of this data, puts it in one easy to read graphic. If it ever gets below a 30, we're in a buyer's market. Anything above that, we're just seeing how much of a seller's market are we in. We're at a 54 out of 100. We've been around 54 for several months now. Not a lot of changes. The only thing you'll see here is that we had a little uptick in price decreases up to 38.49%, but median list price is holding steady. Median days on market remains at 28. Inventory had a little tick down, but overall, almost nothing has changed. The one thing that I really do want to cover though is the inventory here. So if we look at February to August of last year, we went from 794 homes all the way up to 2723. So you can see there was a huge run up in inventory. But if you look at this year, I mean, we actually didn't even bottom until May at 1987 homes. And here in July, we're only at 2520. So at 2520, we're pretty much exactly where we were a year ago on inventory. While we should be going straight up, we're not. Now, what you need to keep in mind is that our inventory usually peaks in October. So we have like 2.5 months for our inventory to get to the highest point it's going to get, and it's not barely climbing at all, which means it's very likely that we're going to end this year with a lot less supply than we had last year. So if you're looking ahead and you're forecasting where inventory is going to be, it's going to be worse than it was last year, even with rates way up here, which tells you that when rates drop, which is eventually going to happen, there's going to be not enough supply for the amount of demand that's going to come in. We have been seeing evidence of this all year long. Buyers are waiting on the sidelines. Anything below 6.5%, they're flooding in. If we get down to 5.99, forget it. You do not want to wait until rates drop because inventory is not going to be climbing. I say this every week. If you can buy a house today, buy a house today. Don't wait and try to time the market. And if you're still on the fence, please watch this video. Okay, moving on to Collin County. Collin County is seeing a bit of a price decrease, but we're basically just back to where we were in April. Median days on market remains low at 21. They're also having more price decreases. Their inventory looks like remaining flat. Pretty flat. Their market action continues to drop, but not significantly from a month before. You see this little gray sliver, that's where we were last month. No significant drop there. But again, looking at their inventory, their huge run up in February was from 305 homes up to 2,022, and as of today, we're only at 1949. So Collin County has less homes on the market today than it did in the same week a year ago. So same supply constraint issue. And I also wanted to address very quickly the amount of homes having price decreases. This is not one of the more reliable indicators because as you can see, it's not that the market is cooling off significantly, which just means there are a lot of people who listed their homes too high. There are a lot of people who are still too optimistic, unrealistic. They're not looking at comps when they list. They just think they can get top dollar. They list it. So don't think that because homes are having price decreases, that means the market is slowing down. It just means people were listing way too high to begin with. Okay, now moving on to my favorite part, the top 10 rank charts. This is ranking all the top 10 cities and zip codes in Dallas and Collin counties. So starting with the hottest cities, we have Grapevine, which has remained at number 1 ever since I've started doing this. This week, Carrollton heats up 1, Louisville heats up 2, Sachse cools off 2, Balch Springs cools off 1, Coppell remains, Duncanville heats up 1, Irving cools off 1, Richardson remains, and Plano remains. So the biggest gainer this week was Louisville moving up 2 spots into the number 3 position. Now looking at zip codes, and remember this is ranking out of all 84 zip codes in Dallas County and all 26 zip codes in Collin County. The absolute hottest zip code is 75007 in Carrollton, followed by 76051 in Grapevine, 75023 in Plano, 75077 in Louisville, 75052 in Grand Prairie, 75231 in Dallas, 75082 in Richardson, 75150 in Mesquite, 75048 in Sachse, and 75006 in Carrollton. Now moving on, same thing, but the top 10 coolest. And don't let this fool you too much. These 4 are below a 40, but remember, none of these are actually a buyer's market, which would be below a 30. So Leonard cools off 1 and moves to the number 1 coolest city. Whitewright heats up 1, Blue Ridge remains, Ferris cools off 1, Prosper cools off 1, Sunnyvale cools off 2, Farmersville heats up 3, Van Alstyne heats up 1, Rockwall jumps onto the list out of nowhere at number 9, and Royce City remains in the number 10, which is the hottest city on the coolest cities list. So the only big change this week is Rockwall jumps on at number 9 and Nevada falls off the coolest cities list entirely. Moving on to the coolest zip codes, and again, still none of these are actually a buyer's market, but the coolest is Leonard, 75452, Whitewright, 75491, Dallas, 75219, Dallas 75208, Blue Ridge 75424, Ferris 75125, Dallas 75203, Dallas 75209, Prosper 75078, and Sunnyvale 75182. Now we're going to take a look at inventory. I'm just looking at the weekly side today. And remember, if you're a buyer, you want inventory to be climbing. As we can see, Dallas did not climb this week. I know it's probably too small for you guys to see, but it looks like a little downtick this week. But as we can see in a lot of the Collin County areas, for example, McKinney, you can see they're having a good climb in inventory. Frisco as well, Plano as well. Prosper remains flat. Rockwall is slowly climbing, same with Royce City. Garland is having a nice curve up, Wiley is having a very nice curve up, and Allen as well. So a lot of these Collin County areas are seeing a big increase in inventory, which is great. That's what we need to see this year. Remember, we only have until maybe mid to end of October for that number to get as high as it's gonna get this year. So seeing a few of these going straight up, that's very good news. Okay, well that does it for this week. I'd love to hear any feedback on anything new that you'd like to hear, any thoughts you have, any concerns you have, and as always, if you're looking to buy or sell in the Dallas area, whether it's next week or next year, just call, text, or shoot me an email. I'd love to connect. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.